and those on the call as well. My name is Katie. I work in IBM. I have done for 7 years now, which is actually quite a scary number. But I started a little bit differently. I had a degree in environmental science. I decided I wanted to be a tree hugger and do meteorology and hydrology and all of those things. And then went to IBM and did a scheme called Leading to Africa. And it was all about how you go and put technology in third world countries and all of those things. And it was really great. And I applied back and I thought, yeah, this is going to be my career. They had a team called Energy and Utilities. And at the time, they weren't hiring, but cybersecurity were. So my initial thought was, I'll go there. It'll be my foot in the door, and then I'll get straight out of it and go back to tree hugging. But 7 years later, I'm still here. So obviously something has stuck a little bit. But I started very much as a delivery consultant for cloud security. And then I've moved across now into application security. And I now work for our global team in sorting out all of the offerings that we have. So how do we, as IBM, position DevSecOps, all of application security? Do we have people trained? Do we have the skills we need for the client deliveries and things like that? So a bit of a different path. But I think, according to Roy's stats earlier, being a woman in cybersecurity and DevSecOps, we need the numbers. So I'll stick about a little bit longer. But I'm here today, so we're going to have a little look at DevSecOps. And what I want to draw his attention to is how we make it a bit of a fast track path, but equally it's got to be how we start using the entire process together. I think too often sometimes it very much is siloed. We get no value from left to right, and actually it becomes a frustrating process. So this hopefully is how we use DevSecOps really efficiently. I didn't want to make this entire talk about AI, but I feel like you can't come and do a talk and not talk a little bit about AI in today's world. And I went to a really interesting talk the other day where there was a lady who was doing her doctorate in AI ethics. So she's got a very big career ahead of her. And she gave this fantastic speech about AI bias and how are we truly representing the correct people in the decision making for AI and training today. So if we think about women inequality, if we think about BAME groups, if we think about all of those other levels of inequality, do we have the correct representation going forwards that actually we're happy with the decisions it's going to make? And I kind of thought about this in terms of an application security perspective, because every client call I go on at the moment, they want to know how they can start using AI. But at the moment, if we're using loads of sources such as this, and there are hundreds of other really good ones out there to train our AI, the big question is, are we really aware of the bias that's there? And there are guardrails that people put in place for hate speech, all of those kind of things, and a lot of security controls as well. But I think the overarching question is, who and what are defining these guardrails? And actually, if we're using all of these sources, what's stopping us from making the same mistakes again if we're going to start moving towards AI? So not to do her speech any justice, but to turn this into a security perspective, we need to start thinking about, what does this mean for DevSecOps in that sense? That's very much kind of where it's heading to. Now, I pulled this slide together a little while ago because generally, if you're an application developer, you're going to be using hundreds and hundreds of tools. These are just a very small example, but we've kind of got the developer will always code in different ways as well. But now we're having to start to introduce tools such as this. Developers are moving towards AI-assisted and vibe coding. So we are seeing a different way that applications are being created, and that is leading to a different number of security vulnerabilities that we need to start being aware of a little bit. But arguably the fundamentals are the same. Security remains a lot the same. So what does this mean for DevSecOps? Well, what I wanted to do with you today is to actually go through the entire DevSecOps journey. And for those of you, so it would be good just to understand, if you raise your hand if you're on the call, in the room and on the call, who sits more on the development side of DevSecOps? You at the back, and I don't know if you can see the call. Put your hand up on the call if you can. Anyone see the call to see who's popped their hand up?
Having a look.
I wanted to just know the split a bit.
These slides make it in on the call. I might not be able to see that.
I think Roy can see on his.
Yeah, I'm just checking much chat.
Just on the hand. So if people just stick their hand up, if they are more on the developer side of DevSecOps. Or we've got everyone security and only 3 developers in the room. That's good, okay.
Fine.
A couple. We got 1. Okay. So then I'm assuming everyone else is more on the security side, DevSecOps. We've got some, anyone that's on the operations, the SOC side? Yeah? Fantastic. That's kind of a very exciting, that's what everyone assumes we do, incident response when you say cybersecurity. So let's have a look at doing this. Now, I dragged my partner here in the room and he's a developer. So when I started building this story out, I think this is a lot of what we discuss, makes our relationship sound really fun, but a lot of what we start discussing in an evening. So we've got a feature. So we're going to go through this entire process and we're going to start doing this using this feature. So we have a developer, we can call him Ben. He wants to make things more efficient in his company, which is a challenge we get all the time. And he's saying, I want to start using an in-house AI assistant to write all the code for me, and he's just going to write some prompts for it. So that's a fantastic thing to do. And as we kind of just discovered, it might lead us with a few more security challenges as well. So that there, we're very much in the planning stage here. We really, really need to know what it is we're building, but equally from a security perspective. And we need to have a really good list of requirements. If we don't start planning effectively, then the rest of the pipeline somewhat fails. So in this point, we have a couple of requirements we've got from the business. The AI tool should only be available internally, and actually all of the code has to go through a pipeline all the way through to production. So when we're still in the planning stage, what we then tend to do is draw what's going on. So we've told the developer here, actually, I need a new feature. We maybe want to add some Black Friday deals, or you want to add the ability to do anything. So he's got a ticket, and all he's going to do now is go ahead and write the prompt. Now that there, we should start thinking about questions from a security perspective already. But that goes to the in-house AI code assistant. They write the code for us. It goes into a feature branch. And thankfully, there is an approver here, and then all the way through to the respective environment. So we're automating the way code is deployed. All just the only human interaction we've had is from a developer and then from an approver. So this is the real beginning of what we're calling now a threat model. This here is what we call a data flow diagram. So we've drawn out exactly what it is we are planning to build. This is our requirement in a data flow diagram section. And now I've added these little labels over the top, because when we do the planning, it's really important to consider what security controls and assets we really care about. So we can think about asset tagging at this level, even if we want to. But we've called out some really key security controls. We might have some API keys. We've got an approver. We've got authentication at CO3, so username, password, all of these types of things. So it's a really, really clear image. Now this, for those of you that know threat modeling, this is the start of the process. This is the question 1, which is what are we building? At this stage, we then need to think about what could possibly go wrong. So we're going to start finding some threats in the design that we've come up with. Now, for those of you that know AI or AI code generation, I'm assuming everyone here has put some prompts into it. Rusty and I were making images on it the other day, and it came out with some questionable choices. And Roy, we were talking about it. You start to ask it to change certain things, and actually it's not quite given you maybe what you've asked for. I really silly the other day asked it to tell me how I could integrate Zap, so the dash scan, through to Kenna, so I could send all my vulnerabilities. And it gave me this fantastic story. And this is where you can tell that I'm not a true developer at heart, because I didn't pick up that it was lying to me. But it gave me this fantastic story, and I turned it all into a design on Confluence, and I presented it to the client. And then we went and delivered it, and it obviously didn't work. So I looked like a really silly person. But it was just a big lesson. It would tell us everything is perfect, but really it's not. So one of the biggest threats, of course, we've got here is AI hallucinations, right? We've picked the asset being the AI agent. This is one of the biggest things it can do. So when we start this planning stage, we're going to use something called stride, and we're going to come up with things that hypothetically can go wrong in our design. We are hypothetically attacking the design before we've even created it. So this is kind of what we should write out when we start thinking about these threats. I've got what type of attack it is, so I'll be using STRIDE. It's an elevation of privilege. I've stated who the attacker is, and I've stated exactly what the threat is. And actually, I've given it a risk, and that's so important because when you're a security person, and I'm sure many of you in the room and on the call will appreciate, it seems like it's a constant battle with people to try and prioritize why you need to have a control or prioritize funding. The best way, I'm not pro the scare tactic, but sometimes if you actually present the real risk to the business, they're very happy to change their opinion and actually start listening to you a little bit more. So give them the risk, and then importantly, give them the control. So right now we're going to say, hey, maybe don't build the AI assistant in-house, because I'm sure your developers are great, but let's maybe use something that's commercially and viably tested. Or if you're worried about hallucinations, well, let's start doing some accuracy testing on the outputs it's going to give us. Let's use RAG, let's use triangulation, any of those types of things, and then tell them where it's going to be better. So we start to define these threats. We've got another one here. Let's say someone's able to spoof the developer. They can write whatever prompt they like and start putting in really malicious code. So, okay, let's go and put all of these controls here in place. Let's make sure they've got MFA. Let's make sure all of their code is scanned and all of these types of things. And then importantly, map them if you want to as well to things like MITRE and CAPEC and all of these industry, and OWASP as well. So this here is very much the main part of a threat model. But what we then do is we redraw our plan. So we've learned all of the lessons from our design phase. We now know all of the security vulnerabilities or potential vulnerabilities, and I've redrawn the design now. So now we're adding in additional controls here, and you can see this has got a lot bigger. So we're running static code scans, we're running dynamic scans, all of these types of things, so that actually the threats that I found, I've already designed a mitigation. So the sad thing is, we're still in the plan stage. And a lot of you might say, well, you've really longed this out. I could have written the entire application by now. And that's very true. But you would have built something with an awful lot of security vulnerabilities, and you would have to fix them when you're already in production. The whole point is I've done an awful lot of this security before I've written any code. And now my developer can go and do something really, really efficient. So now we're done planning. You can see I've got a lot longer list of security controls there. We move on to the code and build stage. So now what we need to be doing is we want to let the developer have a bit of freedom. We want to let them build everything they want to. So go ahead, run your prompts and get all excited with the new AI features. But now I've put some guardrails in place to start making sure you can't do anything too bad here, because I've got a whole bunch of tests. So I asked the question to one of our colleagues the other day, because all of these scans are fairly fundamental in whoever's making the code, whether it's AI or a human, right? You have to be doing all of these things. And I asked the question, what do we need to be doing differently with all of these scans if it's AI writing the code? And fundamentally, the answer is, well, not a huge amount, because the security weaknesses stay the same. A human makes mistakes. An AI model is going to make mistakes. What mistakes they make might be slightly different, but actually fundamentally what good security looks like is going to be the same. So one thing we have to think about is, if you are, this is kind of a catch-22, if you are asking AI to write the code for you, then actually we really have to enforce manual reviews on how it's configured things and doing a whole bunch of testing to make sure it's done things properly. Keeping a human in the loop is what we call it at this stage of AI integration is incredibly important. Let's not step back and release all reins. Let's make sure we keep that human in the loop at all points. So running through all these types of scans here, the biggest thing we have to look at with SAST scans, so static application scans, is that we are making sure the correct languages and frameworks have guardrails against them. Because where our developers, we might well have a PHP developer or a React or a Node.js developer. Actually, AI can start coding in any language, right? So we need to make sure that our scans are broad enough to capture everything there. Software composition analysis, it stays largely the same. But it all comes down to how we're training models and what open source packages we're allowing it to use. We have to be really restrictive to say, look, these are the ones we're going to allow it to use, or these are the ones maybe we won't. I think I've written that wrong. That's not SCA, that's secret detection. So apologies for that one. Finding secrets, that's fundamental. That's exactly the same point the whole way through. And of course, our dynamic scans there as well. The biggest thing we have to think about is how confident are you when you select all of these tools? Someone made a really interesting point the other day when they were asking what types of tools should we be using? Well, the answer is it has to work with what's best for the frameworks that you've got. So maybe if you're thinking about using some of these tools, try a couple of them, because actually when you start thinking about what they catch, a lot of them are trained to catch very different things. So maybe start using a couple and see which ones have the highest success rate of what's coming through. Because these tools are only ever as good as you configure them to be. If you just turn on the out of the box, you're just going to get the really general things, and a lot of stuff is going to slip through the net. So you really do have to tailor that. And so much of that should come from your plan. What's your requirements? What are you building? Start feeding the knowledge through. When we were looking at the threat model, if you found anything about cross-site scripting, SQL injection, any of those things, start tailoring your scans so it actually is picking up what it is you're building. Any questions on this so far? Makes sense. Okay. This is the next part, and I don't think this is ever done enough. On all of the projects, yes, we can get the slides, I think, Roy. Yeah, fantastic. A lot of the projects I work on, the security team sits really separately to the rest of the developer team. And I think that's a problem in many, many situations. But when testers come along, they have this fantastic list of quality tests that they go and run. And there's 30 tests and they do the same 30 every single time. There is very, very rarely a feedback loop between all of the security assessments that are done and these test cases. So when we're doing things like threat models, we have to be making test cases for not only the pen testing to go and happen, but equally our QA teams as well. So let's look at this one. This came off of one of our threat models. We were really worried about that developer being spoofed. So we created a test case, even though we put a really good mitigation in place, we created a test case that say, okay, we'll go and try and attack it then. Go and try and try 30 different passwords all at the same time using this email address here. But we have to be telling the team, this is what you do, and this is what you're supposed to see back. So you know whether or not that test case was a success or a failure. If we are not telling our pen test teams and just letting them run blind and doing their basic testing, we're never going to get some really granular and things we're actually really concerned about. So that's very much how we're doing the testing side of things. It all very much has to feed together. The same thing is with the SOC. For those of you that do threat modeling, a data flow diagram is one of the most valuable things you can give a SOC. If you've got someone sitting there, and I think you at the back was in incident response maybe, you are literally giving the SOC the attack path, all drawn out ready for them. There are way too many situations where the person behind the machine watching it 24/7 is monitoring completely blind, and they've just turned on the out-of-the-box controls. You have done all of that work drawing a diagram. Why would you not sit with the team, let them have access to the diagram, show them how your system is working? But more importantly, if you're concerned about a particular thing that you've built, you've raised a risk, it's fantastic that that risk is sitting in an Excel spreadsheet, but where it's going to be most valuable is as an alarm on your SOC system. So you have to be making SOC tickets that feed through. So we were worried, for example, about a new package being introduced that was vulnerable because the AI model might have said, yeah, sure, bring in this new NPM package that we're seeing all over the news at the moment. Let's be telling the SOC to monitor and tell me about it straight away, because otherwise they're monitoring blind. So the whole value here, and I think the fast track path, is very much we have to be working as one team across DevSecOps and sharing the value the entire way around. So I've given you lots of slides individually, but we're just going to go through and show you what this looks like and which team members particularly benefit from this. And it's not just security. So we firstly have our engineers or our architects or anything like that doing these threat models from the start, creating these architectural diagrams. Because if we just have security doing this work, we only get security's opinion on what can go wrong. The architects are the ones designing it. They know the system inside out. So they're going to have a really good understanding of what threats can happen. So then we end up with that threat modeling report, which is this bit here. And the most important thing is that that does not stay in an Excel or a lovely Confluence page. It ends up in a backlog. It ends up as Jira tickets or ADO tickets, anything like that. So teams are actively working on, and we can track that threats have been mitigated. So that goes, your risk teams are now really happy as well, because you've presented anything that you're concerned about. We know what the residual risks are. So they can start logging all of these things, and they're really happy about it. Equally, your test teams are really happy because you've told them exactly what you're concerned about, and you've told them what to go and test. So now we've made these pen testers really happy, because now they're going to go and deep dive. Pen testers have to find something in a report. Arguably, you've made it really hard because you've mitigated a lot of things at the beginning. But now we've told them, go and have a real deep dive here because I'm really worried about it. So they're happy about doing that as well. And then finally, so are the SOC. So you've got this big process here, which is a fantastic feedback loop where everybody starts to get value from each other. Now, in the process of AI, I asked Gemini to summarize this whole story for me, and it actually gave a pretty good job. Everyone looks fairly smiley, and he's not done a great job on the outfits of the men. I've got a lot of diversity there. But I think generally, it kind of presents quite a good model. And fundamentally, they've kind of got it right. It's very much about the shared knowledge and allowing teams to learn from each other. So I think that's largely a lot of the slides covered. What I do want to draw your attention to is, does anyone here do a lot of threat modeling? And those on the call as well? Nobody. Okay, well, you don't have a choice. You have to. You work with me. Yeah.
I'm on a course every day.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so we're going to change that yes to that no to a yes for a few more people, I think now. Maybe the question I should have asked was who's now going to threat model? And obviously you'd all stick your hands up now. But we run this thing called Threat Modeling Connect. It is very similar to, I guess, what you guys are doing here with DevSecOps. It's funded by Irius Risk, but there is a load of chapters you can just select which GO you're a part of, and then you can come and join virtually or in person. So I lead the London one, and on Monday the 8th, we have an entire session on how to threat model AI systems. I won't be doing that talk because I'm not even nearly smart enough to understand exactly how it should be working, but we've got some real big SMEs coming in. It's linked with Singapore as well, so we're going global on this one, which is fun. But yeah, if you want to, the link is up the top. It's completely free as well, just like this. So come and join in any of the sessions, and hopefully you can, when I next say who does threat modeling, everyone puts their hand up, and it's a lot better. But happy to take any questions, I guess.
Where can we follow up this round or
So the
seriously?
link, yeah, I will send that out, but it's simply just threatmodelingconnect.com, and you select the chapter. The London one is there, but there's hundreds across the globe.
Different geographies, aren't there?
There's loads, and a lot of them are virtual, so just select what's most relevant to you as well.
Okay, well, look, thank you so much, Katie. That was really interesting. Have we got any questions in the room? And we can come around and get questions for people online. So,
Oh, thank you, Katie. Going back to the slide where you said everyone works together, but the engineers at the one before.
Yeah.
So would the engineers create the initial data flow, or would the security team work with them?
It should be a security-led task, but not a security-only task.
Okay.
Because these are the incredibly brainy people that can draw exactly how the process is going to happen, all of the user journeys. if you just get, and the reason we don't do that is if you just get security coming in doing these, you end up with security telling you, hey, I found a list of everything that's wrong with your design, you're rubbish, go fix it. And that's been a big morale problem with security in the past, and the whole DevSecOps conundrum. So if you do that as a group, your PMs, your engineers, your architects, your developers, get them all doing it. They then all start to understand where you're coming from a security perspective. But equally, you as a security person have one mindset, the developer has another mindset, the PM, some of the least technical people are the most valuable on these calls because they think about things at a much higher level and they start to think about things a bit differently. So it should absolutely be a diverse call. Although I was on a client call once and there was a man who started telling me that aliens are going to attack at me, writing them all as threats.
So sometimes you get people doing that just to get people thinking.
He did get me thinking.
It can be a distraction as well.
They went in the unsure pile.
And then everyone will go off and start thinking about flying saucers and all sorts of things.
Someone would have probably raised the risk of what if Cloudflare goes down, and you would have said that will never happen. So.
We've had it twice in 2 weeks for some key pledges. Yeah.
Just on your threat modelling, Roy, we've had Iris Risk here before.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they were very keen on embedding CIS at the time. And I think that it would be really interesting to see what we're going to do in the future, because we've lost a lot of the support that CC used to provide. So the entire CVE system lost its funding and is on life support. So it'd be really interesting to see what other things you've got to augment that.
Well, throughout Areas Risk have an enterprise edition, but they also have a community. They probably spoke you through this.
They came.
Yeah.
No, but do you want to explain about the community edition? This is really interesting. If you've not played with tools like this, you can get this stuff for free. Limited use. Yeah.
So I would absolutely avoid what's it called again? Areas Risk Community Edition.
It is really good.
Yeah, I would avoid putting anything client confidential in it.
Absolutely.
Was that a secrets check by any chance? Was that you checking for secrets out of habit?
No, I haven't shared my screen.
Yeah, so the point Katie was making, if you're using any of these free tools and you're doing it as part of a real, as opposed to just a learning exercise, or even just as even if it is a learning exercise, if you've not got a contract with that person for confidentiality of the data that you're putting in, or you have worries about it, then don't put anything sensitive or confidential into it.
Yeah.
So by all means, do an anonymized risk model. Yeah, you can still do a diagram, but you don't have to put your company name all over it. Yeah, and you don't have to put anything in it that could be attributed to your project. But I've certainly done this on projects using the community edition. You can put generic
Sanitize
there. You can say there's a web server, there's a database and what have you, or as a Kubernetes cluster or whatever it is. But you don't have to. No, you can give them names like ABC or something, but you don't put anything in there that could be linked back to where you're working, or if you're working as a consultant to a customer that you're supporting, which would be even worse. Yeah.
So might be difficult. Yeah. But you do just have to make an account, but you can make even 3 threat models at any one time for free. Then when you get to your 4th, you can make the first one.
Yeah, but you can do a limited amount with it. You can't do as much as on the full thing, obviously, because you're not paying for it. It's a really good learning tool.
But what it does is I showed you the diagram on there. So you still have to draw the diagram, but it will go and generate all the threats for you, and it will give you CVSS risk scores, and it will map it to MITRE and CAPEC and all of those things as well. So you can get a real follow through. There is one challenge that if you put something quite vague in, it will give you like 700 threats. So the more detail you put in, the better. And you right click on, you draw a diagram like this. You can right click on any of the components and say complete questionnaire. And then you say, like, has it got PCI data? Does it use encryption in transit? Blah, blah, blah. And the more you do that, although it takes a little while, the better your threat model will be, because you're not going to have loads of irrelevant stuff because if you don't give it the detail, it'll assume you don't have a security control. So it will just give you loads of stuff. But it's a really cool tool.
Now, for what you pay for it, It's
Well, it's
amazing.
free if you
Yeah.
use that. No, but yeah,
Yeah, I clearly, the company are, they want to sell you the real thing, but they are also trying to encourage people out there.
I think there's some
The
others.
threat modeling.
There's
There
a
are-
lot. Threat Dragon, Threat Modeler. I don't know if it's still
Threat Modeler is still there.
Still going.
Threat Dragon is an OWASP one, and that's pretty
Yeah.
good as well. And you can even do like a browser-based thing. This is completely browser-based. Threat Dragon, you can download and run on your own machine, so you can be completely offline and put whatever you like into it. No one's spying on you, so that's quite nice. It's quite different to Iris Risk, but have a play with it and see what you think. And Threat Modeler is again completely different, but I don't think they have a free version anymore.
No.
If you use Mermaid and it's similar, you get, but it's not the best, so I'll try this one.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
not used
So,
that.
so there's different ones out there worth looking at. I've had a couple of questions from people online.
Yeah,
Should we have a go at those?
please.
So, so there's a question from Luciano saying, should we have multiple data flow diagrams, one per user story, or one for the whole system?
Well, yeah. So he's not going to like my answer, but it is one per user story. And the reason is when you make one big data flow diagram, it is way too big and it takes you hours and hours to do it. And then the output is ridiculous because you've got 400 threats and you've not really done any of it properly. The whole purpose of threat modeling is little and often. So anytime that there is a significant change to something that exists, or you build a new feature, you do a threat model. It should never be a task that takes you more than 2 hours to get done. Well, that might be optimistic. 3 hours to get done. So yes, lots of little ones and keep them up to date.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful to hear that explained and why. So Femi asked for the link. I presume, Femi, you're asking for the link for Iris Risk. I put that in the chat, but you just look up Iris Risk Community Edition. That's all I did.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard. So comment from Simon saying, thank you. I found your presentation style very compelling, which made it all the more interesting. So great stuff. That's nice. So we had some nice positive feedback. Yeah, that's good. So anyone else in the room? Anything? I had a couple of things if nobody else did, but okay. You had some diagrams earlier. Okay. Would it possible to go back to that, like that pipeline diagram?
The better one or the before we do the model one?
Maybe the before one to start with. Yeah. Okay. So here. So this was like maybe an evolution. So this is like where it started, and then the other one was where it came to. Is that right?
Yes. So this was before we found the threats and the security weaknesses, and then we redrew our design with the mitigating controls we found from the threats.
Yeah. So the threat model you're doing there was for the pipeline.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So do people understand that? So it wasn't for the business application you were designing, it was for the pipeline.
Yeah. I can see the confusion.
Yeah. No, I wasn't saying it was confusing. I'm just trying to make sure, because I only realized that now.
And I think people often forget to look at their in-house processes from a security perspective. Everyone does like, well, what website are we going to build? How is the customer going to interact? Which are all incredibly valid. But if the way you're developing all of the stuff to start with doesn't have any security, then you've got a catch-22.
Yeah. So I'll come back to so the key point here is if this is your route to production, and so if you've got a lot of automation in there, and this is how you're going to push stuff through and get it into the live environment, and you want to have automation to make it quick, to make it efficient and so forth. If that automation is liable to being used in some way, then bad things can happen. So that's what you were doing, wasn't it? You were looking at what other potential risks and threats for your automated build and deploy and so forth process, and then you went to the second one. Okay, brilliant. So that's useful. And when you were looking at this picture here, and I know it was only an example, how common, how realistic is this are people doing this in terms of, are they really coming and doing some prompting work down here, generating something and pushing it through an automated system which has got relatively minimal human interaction?
Depending on which clients you talk to, I only drew a line into production because my PowerPoint side was only so big.
Yeah.
But arguably we have a dev and test and then pre-prod and prod, of course. My concern that I'm starting to see with clients is is whether the company allows it or not. A lot of the developers will be using AI to start generating their code. And I really interestingly was in a client conversation the other day where they only gave licenses to the AI agents for senior devs. No junior dev was allowed to touch any AI tool, and it was primarily because they weren't trusted to use the output correctly. They didn't truly know what good looked like enough to start taking an output and putting it into their code repositories. So that's quite an interesting way of tackling it. I'm not sure how it went down with the junior devs.
But that was how they were trying to mitigate the risk. Was
Yeah, I kind of said it's
pros
like
and cons.
when you get upgraded from a pencil to a pen in primary school, like you've now been given that level of trust.
The job of the senior devs to create a playpen, I used to call it a work ground, for the junior devs to work in safely.
I think their perspective was they need to build up the base knowledge first before we start letting them go with productivity enhancements.
If you know that you're going to give them a task to do some basic building blocks and you give them the building blocks, surely that must be fine.
Yeah, that was their approach. I think they were just worried. They weren't hugely mature in terms of DevSecOps. So they had a little bit of code scanning, but they didn't have DAS. They had manual secret detection in their IDEs and things, but it wasn't built into a pipeline.
Too easy to make a mistake, be catastrophic.
It could have been more detrimental, yeah.
So really what they're saying is our business isn't mature enough to have developers.
Yeah, but I think a lot of companies are nervous about being left behind the AI curve a little bit. So they're like, you've got to try it.
Yeah.
Try it.
Okay, but you had another question over here.
Question was answered, so.
Oh, it's been covered. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you. That's good. We did have another question online from Emmanuel, who says, with how we're handling product development and platform engineering, we now seem to have a situation where we create a golden path for developers to reduce cognitive load. So some of you might have heard this term about reducing cognitive load. We can talk about that another time, but it's when your brain's not big enough to cope, like mine often isn't. So do we see a situation where the pen tester role is reduced more and more? Now, I'm not quite sure how Emmanuel's going to that, but maybe you can explain, Emmanuel, but it's an interesting question. You did touch on pen testing, didn't you, in terms of how you might guide a pen tester to think about certain things.
Yeah. I don't know, Emmanuel, if you want to add to your thing, or I'll just answer it. What I think.
I mean, if there's anything more you want to add, Emmanuel, or even chip in, but what do you think in the meantime?
Fundamentally, no. None of these steps are here to replace any of the later steps. They're here to complement them.
Yeah.
So sometimes when the customer books a pen test, you'll say, just test it for 3 days or a week for me. And arguably they're going to find the low-hanging fruit first, and they're going to give you a report and this is not underwriting anything a pen tester does. We've had some fantastic reports.
Yeah.
But if I clear away all of that low-hanging fruit at the beginning and I make their job a little bit harder, let's not let them waste time finding the easy stuff that I could have fixed here. We now give them the chance to really go and probe properly and have a really good deep dive at everything that is going on, rather than saying, here's 10 SQL injection attacks I've been able to do.
Yeah, so I think I've understood what the question is now. I think perhaps what Emmanuel was saying is, if we've done such a good job at putting security controls in our pipeline, our route to production, maybe we're going to get such perfect results that it's not that the pen tester's job is smaller, it's just they're not going to find as much. And so that might happen. Yeah,
that's what we want.
That would be a great outcome if you could achieve that. Yeah, but does that mean the pen tester has to work less hard? I would question that.
No, and I think someone's just put a comment in the chat which is completely correct. That pen tester is validating that the controls work effectively. So maybe you have an additional comment to this, but I would not let something go live without it. Without pen test.
Still need to check.
Yeah.
If you've got supreme confidence, yes, you're not going to see as much. You might get to the point where you say we're going to loosen the grip a little bit, but I think in that scenario, I think the pen testers are then going to maybe going deeper into areas that if they've got the time and the budget, maybe going into things that you would wanted them to have done anyway. But
let them explore, let them try a different technique.
And I've seen pen testers doing reports on AI technologies, things like summarization engines, and doing some really clever work
There's a massive amount in terms of like prompt injection, all of these things that I don't think a pen tester's ever going to be bored if you've got AI in your system for a while, right?
Yeah.
So,
But it's a good thought. It is an
Yeah.
interesting question.
I think in terms if he's looking at this from a cost saving and a productivity saving perspective, the value, and it is hard to justify spending all this time and money in these early stages. But if you look at the entire big picture, there is a stat, and I can't remember the reference of it, but it's roughly 100 times more cost to fix something in production than it is when you've got a design. And that's hard to justify to the business until something bad happens. But that's the productivity saving.
And that's why we want to get the stuff fixed early rather than wait until the pen tester finds
Easy
it.
to rub out pen and paper. It's quite hard to rebuild a whole app.
Because typically there'll be very little time built into an elapsed time into your plan for fixing anything after a pen test. But you might, if you're lucky, some time built in for doing the pen test. Lots of people are very optimistic and think the pen test is just going to come up and tell me everything is great. Then I'm going to go live. And there will be zero time in elapsed time to fix anything. Now you could say that's a very naive view. But if people are taking that view,
You've got a week of late night.
and the project is already going late, I mean, as if projects ever go late. I mean, no one's ever seen that happen, have they? So if a project's already going late, you're compressing your time for testing at the end, you're compressing your time for fixing it.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? You either put your delivery date back, you go live date back, you go live anyway. You go live anyway, you're accepting a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you accept that risk with your eyes open, you can do that. Yeah. But it's not ideal. So it would be better to find out the things sooner. Yeah.
And that's always the business decision, isn't it? I think the security present the risk, the business make the decision on whether or not they accept it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, so there's a comment about fixing things at design level. So I think Arman's, backing up what you're saying there, which is, yes, if we can get the design right, there's less chance that we're going to find fundamental flaws, later on. Okay, let's just anything else. Doesn't look like we've got anything else coming through online. So unless there's anything else in the room, I'll just say thank you again to Katie. Thank you so much for coming along.